So without further ado, I'm delighted to introduce our first speaker, John Esselmont. So while I'm doing your introduction, John, if you would like to start sharing your screen, please do go ahead. So John is also a trustee of APRS and is a former convener of the Royal Town Planning Institute Scotland. He's a chartered town planner who spent almost 40 years in local strategic land use policy development in Strathclyde and Ayrshire, where he managed the Ayrshire Joint Planning Unit. So John's going to take us through the current consultation on the National Planning Framework and current work on regional spatial strategies and local place plans. So I'm delighted to then hand it over to yourself, John.
Thanks, Kath. I hope you'll see the screen.
So we can't see the screen at the moment, John. Do you want to maybe just try clicking the share screen button again?
All right.
It's always the way, ran perfectly in the practice. It's always the way with technology. It's starting to do something now, John. This is looking good.
Okay.
Yep, so we can see your Zoom screen again. So onto the PowerPoint, and that's perfect. Thanks so much.
Okay, sorry about that, folks. Okay, what I want to run through with you today, this evening, is two presentations, one on the National Planning Framework and one on local police plans. Just to give you some background before we get started, the Planning Act was enacted in 2019, and that was a consequence of a review of the planning system undertaken by independent bodies who looked at the development plan system and made a number of recommendations. Before the 2019 Act, we had an NPF4 Scottish Planning Policy, strategic development plans and local development plans. With the approval of the Act in 2019, we have now moving towards an NPF4, local development plans, which have now extended their period to 10 years, regional spatial strategies, which are non-statutory, and local place plans. So the development plan is now made up of the NPF4 and the local development plans. As Kath mentioned earlier, the government have recognised the need to address net zero Scotland by 2045, and this is set out in the introductory of NPF4, where you'll see that we need to move at pace, I think, to create a shared spatial strategy and to meet the challenges of climate change. And if you can read that for yourself, Tom Arthur is obviously putting a lot of emphasis on the need for the planning system to move quickly and at speed. This is the fourth national planning framework that we have. Scotland has had. The first one started in 2000, was approved in 2004 rather, and the last one was in 2014, NPF4. Now the difference between this spatial plan and previous spatial plans is that it will incorporate, when it's approved, Scottish planning policy. Previously, Scottish planning policy was separate from NPF4, and it wasn't integrated into the actual spatial strategy. So this document now, it'll be part of the development plan, and this matters, I think, because it will be legally binding. I mean, material consideration unless on development decisions, unless other matters, material consideration to indicate otherwise. It also sets out the Scottish Government's priorities and policies for the planning system and how these will help to achieve 2045 net zero target. So the document itself is in 4 parts: a vision and spatial strategy, national developments, a separate section on national planning policy, and a delivery programme, which will be refined in much more detail at the end of the process with buy-in from developers and public sectors. There's also a section on annexes, which include housing targets. So the spatial strategy is about achieving sustainable places. It's about creating areas that are livable places, productive places, and distinctive places. These are maybe jargonistic terms, but I think as we'll go on, we'll see the intent is to focus in terms of sustainable places primarily on carbon reduction and on the nature biodiversity challenges that we face. There are also underpinning the spatial strategy certain spatial principles, 6 in all. These are to focus development, make use of brownfield and urban development, to encourage local living, in other words, making facilities and shopping and workplaces close to where we live, to ensure that across Scotland as a whole, we promote balanced development, that is all parts of Scotland making a contribution to the challenge we face in terms of 2045 carbon reduction. Also conserving and recycling assets so that we are maximizing our resources in this way. Promoting urban and rural synergy, encouraging development in the rural area, or at least to encourage not to encourage a loss of development of population, and also to ensure that as we move forward to 2045, the projects that are taken forward and the opportunities that are taken forward are done in a way that everyone can benefit from them. There are also part of the spatial strategy involves 5 action plans. Now, these action plans have been developed in conjunction with the local authorities. They are part of initial work that's been done in terms of indicative regional strategies, and they show the opportunities that these parts of Scotland can contribute to 2045 targets and reductions. So these are priority projects that will make a significant contribution to those targets. So we look at one of these areas in detail. This is basically an area that extends through the central belt of Scotland up to Dundee and down to southern Ayrshire, using the themes of livable places, productive places, and distinctive places. You'll see that some of the national projects include previous national developments like the Central Scotland Green Network. They also identify areas like Hunterston as providing a strategic asset for future investment. And also in terms of creating distinctive places, areas like Dundee Waterfront, which is ongoing, but new ones such as Clyde Mission, which is an opportunity to identify the opportunities along the Clyde, 500 metres along the Clyde, to renew land, to there's a number of projects that can be brought forward in that area. The second part of the NPF4 are national developments. National developments, there are 18 in all that have been identified. These are significant developments which will help deliver the spatial strategy, but are important in terms of the delivery. Just let you see that in detail where they are. Okay, right, the last part, part 3, or not quite the last part, but part 3 of NPF4 contains a number of policies. There are the overarching policies in terms of addressing the climate emergency and the nature crisis, and also promoting sustainable development, which are policies 1, 2, and 3. And then there are the other policies which have themed us before on livable places, productive places, and distinctive places. Now, these particular policies, some of these policies are new, others are existing policies which have been refreshed. But as you can see from the list there, there is an encouragement to create 20-minute neighbourhoods, and that's something that I think we've all become used to in this lockdown. We're valued our local neighbourhoods and our green spaces. Promoting an infrastructure first approach to development. In other words, utilising existing resources that we have in schools and capacity and other forms of infrastructure. Promoting quality homes by good design and in appropriate locations. Encouraging sustainable travel and transport, and so it goes on. But I think if you will see that within these policies themselves, there is quite a strong emphasis to achieve a change of attitude, I think, which will affect all forms of development. But there will definitely be an encouragement to more localized development, living, and encouraging things like, or not encouraging peat and carbon-rich soils to be restored, to trees to be planted, etc. Finally, the last part of NPF4 is about delivering the spatial strategy. Now, this is going to involve a lot of collaboration between a number of agencies. It also will require the development plan policy and regional spatial strategies that will be developed for them to be taken forward in more detail and implemented. It will also need the delivery of the national developments and an infrastructure first approach, as well as aligning these resources from public and private sectors and in the wider community. Also, as we'll talk in shortly, it's about delivery of local place plans. This key element of the review was to encourage more involvement by the community in the planning of their own areas, and local place plans are one of those mechanisms. So in summary, what we have in NPF4 is a new national strategy and a vision for sustainable locations. We have 6 spatial principles which will guide future development, action plans for each part of Scotland, which will be developed in more detail as regional spatial strategies emerge. We have 18 national developments which are critical to the transition towards national net zero, and new policies. The most significant of these are the global climate emergency, policies on the global climate emergency, on nature recovery, and policies which mitigate future climate impacts, flooding and temperature, policies which enable infrastructure such as clean energy and sustainable transport and waste, and policies which promote 20-minute neighbourhoods, and limit out-of-town greenfield development and reuse of derelict land and buildings. And there are also policies which do not support fossil fuel and peat extraction. Okay. The consultation process is ongoing at the moment, and you're encouraged to look at the materials on the government website. It's a special website that's been developed directly for this consultation, which is Transforming Planning, and there is material and sources on there which allow you to look in more detail at NPF4. You should respond by the 31st of March directly to the Scottish Government. You can obviously send your comments to MSPs and to others who may be interested. Okay, thank you.
Thanks so much, John. If you want to stop sharing your screen there, and it was just to let everybody know as well that On the APRS website, you'll be able to find the APRS response to the Scottish Parliament NPF4 consultation and details on how to respond to the ongoing Scottish Government NPF4 consultation as well. So don't worry, we will be posting all of the links in the chat afterwards, and they will be coming round in an email too. But before we move on to the next speaker, I can see, John, you've unmuted. Did you want to come in there?
Yes, Catherine, there's the other part of John's talk, which is about local place plans. So,
oh, I do apologise, John. I thought that was you finished.
Okay, I was just looking for a breather, so that's fine.
Oh, well, that's fine then. I've given you an excuse to have a breather, have a quick drink, and we'll head back to you for local place plans.
Okay. Let me take.
And I did note that someone put their hand up to ask a question, so thank you very much. When John's finished the second part of his presentation, if it's a specific one for his presentation, we'll be able to take that shortly. Brilliant. Thanks so much, John.
Okay. Right, this is the next part of, in fact, it's probably at one extreme and from one to the other. And this one section is on local place plans. Now, local place plans are came out of the legislation in 2019 and also out of the advice from Empowering Planning. That's the independent review that was undertaken of the planning system to encourage for communities to develop proposals for development and use of land and where they live. There's a great encouragement on in the place principle, which is seeking to communities to develop ideas and opportunities in a collaborative way and come forward with their own community place plans, local place plans. Now, local place plans are prepared by a community body. There's a definition of that, but that could be a small town or a community council, or basically any self-identification body that people feel represents their community. In developing a local place plan, they will have to have regard to the local development plan and also the national planning framework. Local place plans are not part of the local development plan in a sense that they're not statutory, but they can be advisory to the local development plan, and they can be developed to be quite influential, at least that's the intent, on the content of local place plans. Local authorities must take valid local place plans into account when preparing LDPs, and communities local authorities should not treat them as being a replacement to consultation of an LDP. Look, they're currently the guidance that's been developed at the moment on local place plans, and the last time I checked hadn't actually been finalised, but there is a draft version which is on the government's website, and I would recommend that you have a look at these two documents, one on local place plans, which is and also the PS, the Planning Advice Scotland note on local place plans. Both are excellent documents. What I think they emphasise that there is no special way of going about it, but there is and there's an ability to be flexible in how you reflect in local circumstance. But the intent is for communities to look at the opportunities to identify areas which they can make their place better, agree priorities, and also to take action. Local place plans, however, are not a wish list of unrealistic investment or a means of stopping live developments. Karen, to prepare a local place plan, you must register with the local authority. It has to belong to the community, In other words, it has to be owned by that community in some fashion. It provide a clear vision, including a spatial map, and that map shows the boundary of your community. It's also a statement of the use of the land and buildings important to the local community. So that could include things like forestry, if that is relevant in a specific community, or it could involve vacant, derelict buildings, land that is in need of restoration. Things that are maybe a blight in that community can be brought forward into the local place plan as areas of action. So we're looking for clear actions and solution-focused descriptions. Proposals have to be realistic and deliverable, and ideally have to be quick wins. They have to, as I said earlier, reflect a local community boundary, such as a village, a town, or a community council area. But the intent is for the community to be empowered to identify economic opportunities, to see how that community can address at first hand climate change, promote health and well-being. Timescales. It probably envisages that you could probably create a local place plan within a year, but I think the important thing is about the initial process of developing that partnership working, and also identifying resources to publish the document and to create the document in a way that involves consultation and maybe a website material, etc. So developing that partnership is critical, and that can be with agencies, obviously with the local authority to a certain extent, and as well as maybe the local schools and businesses in the area. Planning Aid Scotland have set out, not a format, and that's shown on the right-hand side of the screen. But it's up to the community to feel how they want to go about it. Using material that Planning Aid Scotland have prepared, there's a number of projects that you can see from that list, which can give you some ideas on how to go about a place plan. There's no, as I said, there's no set ways, and you'll see within that context quite a range of plans and projects. Also, in terms of funding, the government estimated it might cost around £15,000 to prepare a place plan. There are usual funding opportunities which are listed here, and again, those are on the PAS website and that within that guidance. Okay, that's all I wanted to say there. Thanks.